Now let's study the inverse of a number. For this topic, we're going to look at writing an integer as a fraction, and then we're going to create inverses for integers, fractions, negative numbers, and also negative fractions. So an integer is written as a fraction with 1 as its denominator. So all we're going to do with the integer is we have the integer, the number or the value of that integer as the numerator, and we have 1 as its denominator. So if we look at these examples here, we have 3. If we wanted to write this as a fraction, it just becomes 3 over 1. If we want to write this as a fraction, it becomes 8 over 1. Now, when we want to get the inverse of an integer, or we can say a positive integer, because an integer could be negative or positive. So if we're looking at a positive integer, or integers generally, the first thing we want to do is write it as a fraction. So we write this as a fraction. So the inverse, what happens with the inverse is that your denominator becomes your numerator, and your numerator becomes your denominator. So your inverse now becomes 1 over 3. Same goes for this. We first express this as a fraction. So 8 over 1. So the inverse now becomes 1 over 8. Now let's look at negative numbers. Similar thing. We'll put a negative right here, 5 over 1, and so your inverse, you still have your negative out here, 1 over 5. Here you have negative of 18 over 1, and your inverse is your negative out here, 1 over 18. So fractions are probably the easiest that you can deal with, because it's very easy to see how the numbers change positions. So in this case, you have 5 over 4, and then 47 goes up here, 18 goes down here. Now you have 47 over 18. This represents your inverse. So when you have a fraction, you just flip the positions of your numerator and denominator. For negative fraction, it's the same thing. Similar idea as we did for negative integers. So your inverse is going to be negative, and then you have your 19 over 6. And similar here, your inverse is going to be your negative, and then you have 58 over 23. So important thing to note is that your inverse would always carry the same sign as the original number.